Next, the heading that we have is Paving the Way for a Seamless Customer Experience in Cloud Kitchens. I'm not a professional when it comes to cloud kitchens, so we will invite the professionals who run that sector of the market and control that scope of the event. Moderating the panel will be George Kunapali, who was with me earlier on. See if I can ask the moderator and the panelists to make their way across. So we have Badia, we have Mike, we have Mubarak again. We also do have Naji and Peter joining us on stage, so please join us. We'll hand it over to you, George, if I may. And ideally, if you can all introduce yourselves again, would be amazing. Over to you.
Thank you, Naim. Hi, the topic we are discussing today is paving the way for a seamless customer experience in the cloud kitchen segment. And I have an interesting panel with me here. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with you.
I'm Naji Haddad, the GM of Deliverect MENA.
Badia Hashim, I look after the CX Center at Kitopi.
My name is Mike Hardy. I'm the ex-CEO of AJ Kitchens, currently consulting.
Mubarak Jaffer, co-founder and CEO of KLC Virtual Restaurants.
Peter Schasberg, founder and former CEO of Sweetheart Kitchen.
Great. So let's get started. I'm going to keep this fluid. We'll throw questions to each of you, and you're welcome to support, disagree, and we'll see how the responses shape up, and I'll only jump in if there's a need. And we'll, as much as possible, stick to the subject line, and we have 40 minutes, so we'll see how far we can cover. We have quite a few questions. So my first question is to Peter. As a cloud kitchen operator, what is the biggest hindrance to ensuring a great customer experience?
The biggest
Hindrance.
Hindrance.
The bottleneck.
I think that as an operator, not having complete visibility to your supply chain, meaning the entire journey for the consumer, so everything within our operations, all the way through to the final destination of the delivery. So without having visibility to logistics at the micro level, the order level, or even just in aggregate understanding whether SLAs are being complied with, it's very difficult to hold yourself or the logistics provider, whether it's third party or the aggregators, accountable. If consumers are having problem with the product, it's difficult to ascertain, is that because of you internally, or is it because the logistics is late, rider availability, whatever the case may be. So I have always found great frustration in not having visibility on the logistics side, because then I cannot hold anyone accountable for the issues that are certainly going to occur.
But then, Badi, you manage your own brands as well as other brands which take space in your cloud kitchen as a service model. So how does supply chain troubles affect both parties?
Yeah, I think, so as you said, we manage both brands, some in-house and others. And we manage, if you want to say supply chain, it's for both of them. Hello? Yeah. So supply chain works for both of them simultaneously, I would say. And the supply for each brand is different from the requirements of the franchisor as well. But we work for both of them at the same time.
Brilliant. Mubarak, how has cloud kitchens changed the consumer behavior? I mean, we hear a lot that dine-in restaurants are losing market share, and cloud kitchens and virtual kitchens are taking over. How has that happened, and how do you see that going forward?
So I think cloud kitchens have allowed a lot of choices and variety in the introduction of new cuisines. I think that was really the turning point for online food delivery. Previously, a lot of people were opening traditional delivery-type restaurants, pizzas, burgers. And I think once people started to order food that they usually go out and eat in a restaurant, that's when cloud kitchens basically capitalized on providing different types of brands that weren't available to customers. And I think now when you look at your order history compared to maybe 5-6 years ago, it's completely different. You're ordering food that you would have never thought you would order, and I think cloud kitchens made that possible, providing different as well categories of brands throughout the day as well is key, and I think that just increased the whole market demand. And there's also something that we always continuously hear in the food scene is that the market is saturated. I think it's very important to look at the market specifically by cuisine as opposed to overall. When you look at the numbers of orders that we are seeing today, if you have maybe 1,000 restaurants serving the same type of food, obviously maybe that certain cuisine might be saturated, but there's still a lot of opportunity, I would say, out there for brands that target specific niche cuisines. And I think that is continuously changing, and there's always going to be a new trend that hits the market, and cloud kitchens basically allow the introduction of these brands at a very low cost. And that's why, I mean, cloud kitchens are just a lot more efficient than maybe running a traditional delivery restaurant that has a bit of a dine-in element to it.
So basically, you're saying entry costs are lower for a virtual kitchen. But then, Mike, I think you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the consumer behavior, I think it's also important that we recognize their price consciousness at this point. I think, at least in my experience, we see people drive towards those discounts. And I think it's an important topic when it comes to cloud kitchens and the effect that discounts have on it, because you see people attracted to those, and you see the aggregators really pushing those as well. You get top spots, you get more positioning and visibility. And I think that the consumer behavior you see when it comes to food in general is really kind of training them to be price conscious. And I think that's the biggest area where the consumer behavior has really changed.
So then what tools do you use to come up with new concepts? Like you've got close to 80 brands under your umbrella. And like Peter, you've also got like something like 15 kitchens running. So what tools do you use to come up with, okay, let's do Vietnamese now, let's come up with a fish and chips concept? How does that work?
So part of it is data-driven. Burgers, for example, there's a huge demand for burgers, so it's kind of simple to understand that you could probably gain some market share. Then there's an intuitive entrepreneurial aspect, which is what's not already available in the market, perhaps. So we've rolled out things like macaroni and cheese or hot dogs because they just weren't really readily available here, and you experiment. That kind of.
So when you go into another market, do you have boots on the ground or you manage from Dubai? You are in a couple of countries, you were, and you are also in 3 countries. So do you have boots on the ground or you manage everything from a tech from your home country?
Yeah, so our headquarters is in Kuwait. We're based in Kuwait, and we also have offices in Dubai and Qatar. It's very important, I think, to have a presence in each market to really understand what's happening on the ground. And we need to remember that we're creating brands, so we need to localize our brands to each market and understand the different factors that affect consumer behavior in each country as well. So I think price, obviously delivery time, location is super important. So not being, I think, physically present in a country, you could possibly maybe open in a hot zone, but probably open on the wrong street that probably has a signal that just changes the whole customer experience. So I think it's very important to understand each market, understand the tastes, the preferences of each market, and then having a cloud kitchen, you can essentially cater to people's needs and tastes as and when needed. And you can launch a brand within 3 to 4 months, and it's really that fast and efficient. And the thing is, it's essentially a massive kitchen that can cater to all customer tastes and preferences. That's really the whole idea of a cloud kitchen.
Brilliant. Naji is in a unique position on this panel because he's not an operator, he's providing a tech solution, and a couple of you are his clients, one of you was his client. So I have this question for you, Naji. To what extent is tech similar to what you offer, a middleware, helping cloud kitchens? Where does that fit in?
I mean, tech today really contributed a lot to enable cloud kitchens to grow faster, right? So, I mean, we can talk about like 60 brands at KLC, and that means 60 menus. So imagine back in the days, without that piece of technology, you will be dealing with a lot of different touch points, right? 60 menus on 3 different platforms. That's like 180 different logins. Imagine, so that's too much. And also on top of that, so today you can see them all in one place, like you can manage them all in one place. You can add descriptions, you can add the pictures all centralized. And also on the receiving end, and this is the beauty of it, before you have to manage all these tablets, and you can do the same math with the tablets as the menus, but today we can send the order as the customer ordered it exactly to the kitchen. So that eliminates a lot of mistakes, right? And it also it reduces some prep time, right? So because before you used to manually accept it, manually punch it, so you can save up 2 minutes here, and that time is really precious, right? And if you look at the consumer, based on research, the top thing that they want is speed of delivery. I mean, 35%, unfortunately, they expect their delivery to be under 30 minutes, which is too fast, in my opinion. But that will allow the delivery to be faster, and with a great piece of technology also that we keep adding as an example for consumer behavior. So if you know that your order is going to be late, right? So hey, the driver checked in at your restaurant through the technology, whatever we are providing. Then we notify that kitchen that, hey, this order is going to be late for the customer. Do something. So they can prepare notes, right? So they can prepare a nice note, sorry, we're late, put a cookie, put something extra. That will make that experience, even if the order was late, it will not result into a negative review, because these guys, you can't see them, right? And you don't know anything about them because they came through the aggregators. So how can you, like in a restaurant, you just go and say sorry, you offer coffee, you offer something. But with delivery, it kind of, you need to do everything preventive. Yeah, exactly.
So delivery is more preventive rather than dine-in, where you can be reactive. But then I have a follow-up question. To what extent are you held back by open APIs and plugins?
I mean, today the ecosystem, what DeliverX stands for, is all about empowering the F&B ecosystem, right? So we have our open APIs, and we today we're proud to have 700 different partners across the globe, where everything is connected to everybody, right? So, and that allows also cloud kitchens and restaurant operators to see everything in one dashboard instead of like looking here and looking there, right? So we've always known that F&B is all about that ecosystem, and since the future of food in general is digital and technology plays a huge role, so we need more of that. We need more of collaborations in that ecosystem. The APIs are open. The technology allows customers to see better. Like today we're receiving rider updates, right? Before we did not receive rider updates, but today we're seeing the rider updates from the delivery channels to make sure that the guys have visibility on the ground of what's going on. So I think that's space is developing, and I think we have a long way to go, but we see that it's going in the right direction.
Certainly, but I have, you have to.
I'd just like to touch on it for a second. I think you nailed it when it comes to that customer experience and making sure you mentioned just as the same in a restaurant. I think that's what a lot of operators are forgetting when it comes to dark kitchens, that customer is still kind of expecting that. They're expecting that attention from the restaurant, that they see it as a restaurant. They don't see it as a factory that dark kitchens are turning into. And they want that. They're putting something in their bodies, right? That they're eating. That there's a sense of trust that needs to be established. And I think there's a lot of operators out there these days that are forgetting that, and forgetting that attention to the consumer themselves, whether it be a problem, whether it be a compliment, you need to communicate. That they don't have a face to it, that they have some photos or a logo online, and that's it. You need to create this relationship, whether it's through social media, whether it's through call centers, and training the call centers, making sure they're just as personable and knowledgeable as your servers in a restaurant. I think it's extremely important, and it's something that's lacking in this field right now.
So I wanted to take that forward from there, where at Nando's we are predominantly a dine-in business, and we do deliveries, but it's not our core focus area. So you guys are only into the delivery business. Is there pressure at any time to build a brick and mortar store of a successful virtual concept?
Yes, and I feel that there's a lot of times where exclusively virtual might not be the way to go unless you put a lot of branding, a lot of personal touch into it. Look, you're missing that touch and feel. You're missing the smells, the music, the ambiance, that personality that you get with your servers. And that's huge. That's key. When I worked for P.F. Chang's, I hired based on personality. I can train the rest. But that personality is missing when it comes to a virtual kitchen. Absolutely, I think there's pressure. I wouldn't call it pressure. I would say opportunity to go brick and mortar.
Mubarak, would you open a physical store for any of your brands?
I think ordering food is an emotional experience. And I think you guys touched on some really important points. I think it's super important to reduce the overall delivery time. It's super important to make sure that the accuracy of information is correct. So when you get an order from the aggregators, if without integration, you'd have to manually punch it into your system. And majority of the time is when you're under pressure, you're going to miss an item. And if you miss an item, that could just completely distort the whole experience. So I do understand having a dine-in presence, you can basically go and rectify this issue and speak to the customer and offer him a complimentary dish or remove the dish that wasn't ordered. I think when we talk about virtual and dine-in, it's very important to remember what are our expectations from the virtual brands. I think a lot of people, they had this idea that if I open a virtual brand, it could add incremental or complementary revenue to my outlet. I think you have to look at it as a business model. So when we see virtual brands, cloud kitchens, it's one, right? You have different approaches. So you have people renting out kitchens, you have people operating, and then you have people who own their own kitchens, and then they own their own brands. And I think understanding what exactly is the expectation from each brand, and then basically creating a model that's sustainable, that houses all of these brands and the whole mix, that's really what, in my opinion, matters, because that's what's going to bring you, that's what's going to create you a healthy business. So I think it really depends on your approach. But if you're trying to do everything, it's very difficult, in my opinion. I think it's a challenge because you have different people. I mean, in your organization, they're going to be telling you to do different things. But when you're focused and specialized, I think it makes things a lot more straightforward and simple. So in my opinion, I'm all in on the virtual side of the business. That's what we understand. When it comes to dine-in, it's something that we attempted at doing, and we failed. And we tried, and we failed. And we tried again, and then we also failed. So I think it's also down to experimentation, and I think we learn from our failures.
I know it's a naughty question, but the one that you failed in, was it a franchise or was it?
No, we've never brought a franchise. We've only had our local brands, and to be honest, we opened the dine-in. It did really well, but then what we realized was, as soon as the complex next door opened, customers just shifted, and then that complex was empty. And then we attempted at doing it again. We opened in a mall this time, in a closed mall. We had a good 2-3 year run, and then what happened was delivery just completely started to carry the business. So we did attempt throughout our 10-year journey to tackle and create a successful dine-in restaurant. But the thing is, when you look at the competition as well from the dine-in side of things, it's fierce. And I think that we also have to respect the competition, and we felt that let's focus on what we know, what we do best, and that's why we just basically pivoted 100% to cloud and virtual brands.
Brilliant.
And just one thing, building on that, on the brick and mortar, cloud kitchen to brick and mortar, actually we're seeing a lot of movement in there. Like, I don't know, like Pinza was a full-on delivery concept, right? And just recently, I mean, you've seen that they opened their first dine-in branch, or maybe I think it's the first dine-in branch in the IFC. And we've seen also other movements before, like Chicken & Co. Also, they were on virtual, then they moved to dine-in. So we're seeing that movement a lot. A lot think that the hybrid model also would work better, and also it's two different separate business models, right?
Yeah, Badi.
I want to add one thing here is that when we started at Kitopi, we were a very cloud kitchen model, and that was expanding a lot during the pandemic as well. So the last few years, it increased the requirement from the customers and the market requirements as well. But very recently, you can see customers are asking more to become having dine-in locations as well. And this is where we also changed our model from being only cloud kitchen to have physical presence as well that is also in front end to customers and in food halls and others as well. So a shift is happening. I mean, it is increasing a lot, but there is also presence and requirement for the customer facing.
Great. My next question is to Peter and Mike. The entire customer journey in a virtual kitchen business, you have the aggregators playing a critical role. You don't have control over the entire customer journey. How do you still ensure a seamless customer experience? Because as far as the customer is concerned, he's ordered with your concept or your concept, but there are too many ifs and buts in between. How do you manage the expectation?
Yeah, I think having platforms like DeliverX is extremely important. I think that making sure that, like you said, the order comes through, it's correct, you're not missing items, otherwise it's a nightmare and you're going to frustrate people. So making sure that the order comes in correct, making sure that you have that call center or somebody from your team that knows your brand on the other end of a phone if somebody needs to call, so that they get that personal experience. And then it comes down to your back of house and making sure that your prep, that your food items, when they're put together, come out well. Your expo is quick and efficient. Your delivery aggregators are making sure that the timing's right. I mean, nothing's worse than having a food item ready, sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, and you're waiting for a driver, and you lose both ways. Either you lose when it comes to the food going out cold, or if you're smart enough, you remake the item, but then you lose on that food cost because you're not going to serve it to or charge that to the consumer. You're not going to charge that to the aggregator. You're going to miss out on that. And then at the end, I honestly think there needs to be a follow-up. And I think this is another area of opportunity for the industry. I see it a little bit, but not enough at this point in time. Again, in those brick and mortars, you have a manager touch the table. How is everything? Not everybody's go on your social media or back to Deliveroo or Talabat and make a comment. You know, not everybody has a time or is that outgoing. Maybe something was cold, maybe something was just off a little bit, but they don't feel like making a big deal about it. Where if you're a manager approaching a table and touching them and asking how their meal was, they're going to tell you. And they're going to be honest. And well, 9 times out of 10, hopefully. And you get that feedback and then you can better yourself. So I think that there's still some gaps where that seamlessness and that positive customer experience can be made. I think, again, with items like DeliverX, we're getting there. I just think the industry still has some time and technology that they can do to help better that. Think about your KDS systems, yeah? In some of these cloud kitchens, like Kotopi, you have one or two guys making salads for 5 different brands. That's a lot of knowledge to expect from somebody. So one, you have retention, like Greg spoke about earlier, which is super important, making sure that you're keeping those employees in-house so that they can retain that knowledge and that speed of service so they get the items out quicker. But why aren't we putting training videos on the KDS systems? Oh my God, I don't remember how to make that Caesar salad, press a button, and up comes a 10-second video or a quick recipe. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it would be a great tool to add.
I wanted to ask Peter, when you have customer complaints, you said you're going to go back and talk to the customer, but do aggregators share that information with you? How do you reach out to them when you don't have their contact details?
So I hate to admit this, but I'm less concerned with the orders that go into customer service that are problematic. And I've always been far more focused, 99.9% of my energy and my team, on building very streamlined processes, including the tech, the process flows, because once the customer has an issue on delivery, they have so many different options within our portfolio and others. So I'm not saying that the customers are write-off, but it's difficult to reclaim. So I've never even gotten too far into the details of how can we go and correct an issue that's been created. Oftentimes it wasn't created by us anyway, it's been created by the logistics. But to answer your question approximately, we are able to get in touch with the consumer if there's a problem, but when you're processing 150 orders per hour during peak hours, don't have problems, don't have stockouts, don't have issues, don't have bottlenecks, and then you don't have to worry about one customer issue or complaint then resulting on impacting another 150 customers that are coming through the pipeline. So a lot of people might disagree with my philosophy, but when you're running a manufacturing system, really you got to just get it right every single time. 99.99% of the time, your orders are going through without complaints, without issues, and you will lose an occasional customer who has a bad experience, but that bad experience, if you have a nice clean process, is likely not even caused by your operations, is likely not even an issue that you can correct or account for. So that's been our stage. We've had a customer care center, but we don't put a huge amount of effort into that. The issue has already occurred. It's difficult to rectify once it's happened.
I think that's a great point that he makes when it comes to the logistics side, and I think consumer knowledge of understanding that delivery might not be coming from the restaurant itself, but they still hold us accountable at the end of the day, unfortunately.
They certainly do, because if I'm placing an order with Deliveroo for Nando's, I'm still assuming that anything goes wrong with that order is a Nando's problem. And we keep getting calls where we try to tell them, no, the order was processed by Zomato, or Deliveroo, or Talabat. The customer just doesn't get it.
They don't want excuses.
They don't want excuses. They want you to fix the problem. And that's where the the issue that if it was in a dine-in restaurant, I could have immediately rectified it. Because I'm there, the customer is right in front of me. But
it's a closed circle for you when it comes to a brick and mortar.
100%. And that brings me to my next question. So a lot of services are moving away from the human interface and getting virtual assistants, and where in a cloud kitchen scenario, you probably have the human interface only in preparation of food and probably in the last mile delivery. So how do you fill up those gaps with technology that customer doesn't feel, okay, I don't get to speak to somebody, I'm just on an app, or I'm just talking to a virtual assistant, but they don't seem to understand what my problem is. Like every time we call up a bank, we are struggling to get through to a human interface because the virtual assistant just doesn't get it. How difficult is it?
The virtual assistant is very good in transactional experiences. Like if you want to pay, you want to connect your subscription, or you want to do something. But where there is an emotion involved in the interaction, there is a complaint, or someone wants to voice out what happened, this is where the human element is very important. And in our industry, you don't get a lot of that feedback, as we were saying. Like customers don't really call to you and say what is going on wrong. So that interaction is very important to understand what customer pain points are, and then based on it, you go to the root causes and you fix so that no one else will be going through the same experience at the same time.
Interesting. My next question is slightly away from what we are currently discussing. It's to the operators. To what extent does packaging play a role in ensuring a great customer experience? Because you guys only do delivery.
Back kitchen?
Yeah.
So to me, that's the core of our business model, which is very deep tech penetration, very process-driven cuisines that are married together. So our people, our processes, our tech are very tightly integrated, and everything just flows through nicely like a manufacturing system. You're tracking your inventory. So your inventory accuracy as it relates to your ERP, your technology interface, if you have total accuracy, what is in your system is what is physically in your kitchens or in your manufacturing units, then you can drive all inventory and material flows using algorithms, which are substantially better than humans or chefs making decisions about what to procure or what to produce or what to assemble or what to distribute. So that's the core of our business, has always been everything kitchen related is all about, you can call it Six Sigma or deep tech, but understanding exactly from a remote centralized source what's going on in all the distributed satellites.
So the reason I asked that question was, if you have 50 concepts or 80 concepts like you do, you're probably using chicken as a protein across 50 concepts probably. But when it comes to packaging, you have 80 different branded packaging, correct?
Funnily enough, it is actually probably one of the most stressful, points we have. For one reason, when you order from a brand, most of the time you'd like to see branded packaging. And that was usually the trend many years back. With time, what we're seeing now is a lot of virtual brands are unifying their packaging, and they're using generic packaging. And then that also helps become much more efficient as well from a storage point of view, and also from an outlet point of view. You wouldn't have to have 50 different kind of bags stored in a satellite kitchen. You'd need another...
Then how do you ensure your branding?
Yeah, so the idea is, this is a topic that we discuss on a daily basis. We basically look at the performance of brands, and we have brands that are branded fully, and then brands that go within generic branding that is or also branded. So it's kind of a difficult problem, and we're continuously changing as well based on each market, because you have different brands that perform differently. What we've seen when we've launched across 3 markets, you could have a successful brand in Kuwait, doesn't necessarily succeed in Dubai, but might actually do really well in Qatar. If we went with the approach of going branded across all 3 markets, it wouldn't make sense. It would be inefficient, because you'd have a lot of stock of packaging, and you wouldn't have a lot of, that brand wouldn't be performing. So I think a lot of people need to remember that not every brand will work in every market similarly. So I think brands, I think in your instance as well, I mean, Nando's is a huge brand in the UK. And I think it also, opened across the GCC, opened in Kuwait very early on. And I don't think that people maybe understood that brand. I'm a big fan of Nando's personally. I used to go to Nando's all the time, and I understand what that brand means. But maybe in Kuwait, the perception of that brand wasn't known. People don't know Nando's. Maybe they didn't familiarize themselves with it, and it takes time. So sometimes even power brands, in my opinion, might struggle from market to market, and that's what we've seen.
We came into Kuwait and then we left and we didn't come back.
Yeah. It's strange, because I know a lot of people who love that brand specifically, but what I'm trying to say is that virtual brands, and I would say power brands on a global level, also don't necessarily work in every single market. So I think having a more efficient approach, having generic packaging that's also branded in a way. So what we do is we have bags that are, we've created a brand called One Eatery that is our virtual food hall, and we use the One Eatery brand to basically, across all of our brands, One Eatery brand packaging across the 50 brands, and then we handpick brands that are performing really well, and we make sure that these brands are branded.
Great. We're coming to the end of our discussion, so go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to touch on it as well. I think he's absolutely right. I think there's some brands out there that need that touch and feel. You have your brands like, speaking from a consumer side at this point, you have your brands like Pickle, like Pitfire Pizza, where that personality comes out and it attracts. I think you see that. I think you see the fun patches that Pickle's putting in with the kids' toys, and the things to do on the packaging. I think it's really important. But then there's a Vietnamese soup concept that I order from. That's your simple black and white, wrapped in cellophane, and maybe you get chopsticks, maybe you don't, type of thing with it. That I still like as well, because it's just something that I can't get. I think there's different positioning out there for the brands. Nando's, I think, would definitely have that branding on their packaging, as you do. But I think it really depends on who you're trying to attract, who your target market is, and what you plan to do with that brand in the future. Is it a small brand just kind of supporting the kitchen, or is it going to be this iconic brand that you're positioning to take over a space later on?
Great. I need to ask you all to cap this because we are absolutely short on time. 2 things you would want cloud kitchen operators to do to make the customer experience better. 2 things.
2 things. Wow, that's a...
2 steps.
Well, use DeliverAct, but that's one. No, but I think the opportunity here with cloud kitchens is multi-basket ordering, right? We've seen a lot of cloud kitchens globally and here as well. They offer multi-brand ordering. So if I'm ordering at home, I feel like pizza, my wife feels like burger. So I can just do the same order, and we can save on the 2 drivers that are going to come from different restaurants. So that allows opportunity, and I think it allows a lot of a good consumer experience, right? We've seen it also now in social district and dine-in, right? So where you scan the menu and you see multiple menus. So that is one. And I think the other one is becoming more communicating more, engage more with the consumers, right? On like omni-channel strategies, making sure that they know about the brand, the quality of food, the delivery times, how long it takes to prep food, stuff like that, just to be more educational towards the consumers.
Okay. But the two things that you would want to provide your customers going forward in the pipeline, I mean, if there's something you can talk about
So
to
I would
improve
say, back to the same question as well, is we should focus more on the root causes of what happens wrong in the back end, so we can fix it to customers in the front end as well, because we have a very limited window to fix issues post the order is made or when something wrong happens. So the focus should be into fixing root causes and making sure the journey is as streamlined than others. And the second one would be deal with the order as a customer more than it is an order. So get out of the mentality of it is only a factory that is processing orders, and deal with customers as customers. So listen to them, understand what they're doing, and try as much as possible to personalize that experience with them.
Mike?
I think finding a way to guarantee consistency if your operations get large enough, like I mentioned before, I think that, yeah, consistency would be number one. Two, ensuring that your delivery times are upheld. I know I don't like being lied to when somebody tells me it's going to be there in 30 minutes and it takes an hour and a half. I think that there's opportunities there, and it's something that operators need to start pushing a bit and holding their own drivers or others accountable.
Great.
I think the delivery time is a big issue. We're seeing that, and I think that's something that's outside of a cloud kitchen operator's hands, because it's in the hands of the aggregators. And I think a lot of customers, myself included, when we order, we see a time that's quoted, and then that time could possibly change after ordering. And then that whole stressful period of contacting the aggregator or trying to get in touch with the restaurant is creating a lot of stress, I think, across, from the operator side to the aggregator to the customer. And I think there's also a lot to be done connecting customers with the restaurants. I think there's a big room here for improvement. Having direct contact with customers, I think, is something that's super important, being able to reach out to the customer. And I think that's, in my opinion, just delivery time and being able to interact with customers much more freely, I think, is something that needs to be addressed.
That's a hot topic with aggregators involved. What do you think, Peter?
Certainly everything operationally has been addressed. So I'll throw one thing out there which would be to the benefit of consumers, but to all stakeholders involved in delivery as a supply chain. And that would be, if it's not already underway, I would expect or like to see some M&A activity and some enhanced scale. Follow the path that the aggregators have taken. With enhanced scale, you'll get better economies of scale in procurement and production. Some of the weaker brands will be dismissed, and that will benefit the consumer in the long term, because scale will bring down price, will bring down cost, it will improve the entire supply chain at a regional or global level. So we saw aggregators get to scale through M&A, and I think that it's the verticals now, specifically the dark kitchens or the cloud kitchens, that need to get there in order to improve both the customer experience, customer cost. With more scale, you'll bring in far more greater talent into the domain. So that's my answer.
You nailed that, Peter. I just hope all stakeholders can join hands to focus on offering a far better customer experience. Let's get a few questions. We are out of time. Any questions?
Thanks, George. Vivek George from Yum Brands. We talked about packaging and the importance of packaging and the branding of packaging. In our business, where much of the business is transitioning to the delivery, the time is the enemy of taste. So in your roles, have you worked with packaging suppliers that helps preserve the integrity of the food? Because that's what helps us deliver a good restaurant quality food at the at a customer's house.
look, logistics is what destroys the quality of the food. I think as operators, we all know what's available in the market, and we experiment, and at the end of the day, you can wrap it in the most heat or cold resistant materials. You can package your sushi with ice packs. If it sits out, or if there's a long travel distance, whatever the case may be, that is where the quality really is eroding, and it's not a function of packaging, in my view. Generally, I think everyone in this room is a very competent operator, and if you package your food and it sits waiting for a rider for 30 minutes, or it has to travel 8 or 10 kilometers, there's not much that you can do. You can start to change your cuisine to account for being for travel, but I don't think many of you want to do that. So I don't want to say bite the bullet, but don't blame yourselves for things that are out of your hands, or try to collectively figure out ways to improve logistics. There are ways out there.
I'd like to touch on this as well just for a second. I think it is something that is developing. We're seeing changes in it. We're seeing hot holding, hot plates, different ways to keep things cold. And I think it's something that the industry will definitely get better at over time. French fries, I think, are everybody's pain point if you serve them. And I've seen great technology come out, not just in the packaging, but also in the food itself and the coatings that are put on those. And I think that that's a great area of opportunity when it comes to technology to really do something there. And it's just going to take enough time and enough people really caring about it and putting in that creativity and coming up with new and possible ideas to make this better.
Thank you so much, and a big round of applause to the panelists. That's all we have time for. Thank you, Peter from Sweetheart Kitchen, Mubarak from KLC, Mike from AJ Kitchens, Badi from Kitopi, and Naji from Deliverect. Thank you so much. It was extremely helpful and insightful. Thank you.